not the goal. Awareness is. Hey everybody, I'm Elle, owner and registered dietitian at Eat Well Elle. Today on the Well In session, we're talking about food tracking. I get a lot of questions from patients about tracking and things like, do I have to do it to be successful? How do I do it to make sure I'm reaching my goals? I really hate it. Do I need it? Or can I do this forever? It's the only thing that keeps me on track. So people have pretty strong feelings, positively or negatively, about tracking. So I want to talk today about how to use tracking productively to meet your goals. One reason that it might not be happening is you're actually tracking incorrectly. Sometimes that means putting the wrong food in or the wrong quantity of food in. Usually it actually means tracking at the wrong time or for the wrong reasons. So let's talk about times that tracking isn't always the answer, and we can also talk about times that tracking can be very helpful. Patients often tell me, the people who don't like tracking, that tracking feels like a job, that it takes too much time, that they're tracking and they're not making any change. And so those are the people who are using tracking or they're tracking incorrectly. Those things need to be addressed immediately, because if you are feeling like tracking is a job, you are probably going to quit tracking. And then in turn, you might quit working on your health goals completely because tracking felt to you like an integral part of achieving them, which is not the case. We can absolutely meet your health goals without tracking if you need to. The other part of it might be that you're tracking at the wrong time, which means tracking isn't helping you make change. It's just helping you write down the things that you're doing. At the beginning, before you start to make change, that can be super helpful. Getting a baseline intake, knowing what your macros are, your calories, what your eating routine is, how hungry you are. These are all things that we can track together that can be very, very useful at a baseline. They are not useful once you're trying to make change unless you do it more strategically. If you're tracking while you're dieting, while you're trying to work towards your health goals, it's important that you track before you eat. This is because you will not be making change with what you eat unless you track it before. So once you have eaten, if then you go to put it into your food journal, there is no change that can happen. So if your food journal is revealing that it's not meeting the goals you've set for yourself, it is too late to make change. You've already eaten it. That is where the data doesn't become helpful anymore. It just becomes guilt and shame inducing. Taking guilt and shame out of eating is something that's very important to me. Eating should be fun. It should bring pleasure, and it should work you towards feeling like your best self in both your physical and mental health. When you are doing things like tracking and gaining data that doesn't help you make change, that is just guilt and shame inducing. If those strategies were working before you started tracking, you would have already met the health goals that you have in mind. So if you are going to track, you want to make sure that the data you are collecting and the strategies you're gaining are giving you information to make change. Sometimes that's literally just about food timing. Sometimes that's about portions. Sometimes it's much more detailed than that, and it's about macros. And we need to be really specific about what we're putting in, how we're measuring things, what we're deciding to eat. That is person to person, and what you track depends on what your goals are, and it depends on what your style of motivation is. So if that's something you can work through yourself, great. It might be helpful to work with a dietitian to figure out if tracking is helpful for you, and if the answer is yes and you want to track, then what type of tracking is helpful. Are you doing it 3 days a week just to kind of keep yourself informed on what food choices you're making and how they're impacting your day? Are you doing it every day? Are you doing it at a baseline and then in the middle of your journey? There are so many good options, and none of them are 100% right and none of them are 100% wrong. So, starting to figure out what would work for you makes the most sense before you give yourself an extra job of tracking every day. If you go on to my online courses page, there is a free course on using food journals. So it might be a great place to start if you're looking for more information on how to use a food journal in order to meet your goals. So drop down into the show notes and you can find the link for that. See you guys next time.